Global Mutirão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
Hello everybody, how are we feeling for the session Coffee Too Hot to Handle? Welcome in the German Climate Pavilion. Can you give me a round of applause for also the panelists, and we sweat together in this surrounding. So thanks for coming by and for joining us at this very first day at COP30 here in beautiful Berlin. And this event now, Coffee Too Hot to Handle, stems really from the collaboration with the PIC, the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact. We'd like to understand more on how they can adapt to the impacts of climate change, how we find the solutions, especially when we look into the coffee value chain. Because, as we all know, the world loves coffee, right? Yes, do I get a nodding? Yes. And the Germans, they do love coffee as well. Per year, a German is estimated to drink 164 liters of coffee. That makes around 3.5 cups of coffee each day. And it even ranks before sparkling water and beer in Germany. But when we zoom out on a global perspective, coffee serves, of course, as a livelihood basis for millions of farmers across the globe. But also the coffee plant, and coffee is extremely susceptible to climate change. And therefore, it needs to illustrate the need for climate change adaptation. So we'd like to understand more of how to bring in these solutions that we all know into the local perspective, into the value chain. And it's lovely to see you also. Thanks again for coming by and stepping by after the event. The coffee machine is back on for you to handle a coffee for you. So we'd like to start with a scientific framing on climate risks and adaptation and insights when it comes to the collaboration of the PIC and the BMZ Coffee Project. And for that, I welcome the director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, professor in Earth System Science at the University of Potsdam. The one and only Professor Johan Rockström is with us.
Thank you so much. And well, we know that we face already today record coffee prices across the world. We also know that these record coffee prices are driven not by increases in demand alone, but in particular the impacts of extreme weather events, which have now been scientifically verified essentially across the board as being amplified by human-caused climate change. And dear friends, this happens at 1.3 degrees Celsius of global mean surface temperature rise. And we are inevitably within the next years going to breach 1.5 degrees Celsius. So prepare yourself for even more threats to the coffee prices and coffee availability in the world. We will then enter a phase of overshoot. This overshoot, at best, will only be 50 to 60 years, perhaps reaching up to 1.7 degrees Celsius of global mean surface temperature rise, before we gradually come back to a safe, manageable climate future below 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. This, believe it or not, is the best that science can offer. It's the best that science can offer. These are the most ambitious climate scenarios that are available today. They mean phasing out fossil fuels by 2050. They mean scaling carbon dioxide removal technologies. They mean transforming the industrialized food system, including coffee, from monocultures to regenerative, sustainable intensification, going from source to sink for the agriculture food sector. They mean scaling carbon dioxide removal, as I mentioned, and they mean also the carbon sinks in the Amazon basin and all the other natural ecosystems, both on land and in the ocean. That is what has to happen to be able to bend ourselves back after overshoot. Why are we in overshoot mode? Because we have so far failed to turn things around. We've loaded so much energy, so much heat into the system that we simply have to prepare ourselves for things getting more challenging before they can get potentially better again. So we should hold on to 1.5. The window is still open, but regarding coffee, one has to simply accept that it will get worse before it potentially gets better. And I think this is like one of the most important scientific messages, not only to the coffee industry, but to all the industries that are dependent on a functioning hydrological cycle, on stable temperatures, on productive soils, and on rich, biodiversity, rich agricultural landscapes. And coffee, as we know, is one of the world's most traded commodities in the food sector. It is one of the most demanded ones and appreciated ones in the global economy. And it's largely produced in the global south and consumed in the global north. So this is truly a global challenge, and it's a challenge that requires resilience building. And when I talk about resilience, I mean both adaptation and mitigation. Basically investing in more robust systems but also are more stress tolerant. And many of you are the experts here in the room, but clearly what we show in our research synthesis is that many of these practices and technologies and scientific investments can be succeeded if we build more regenerative agricultural practices, if we go in for more supportive drought proofing with supplementary irrigation, if we work with, which is very challenging, with gradual adaptation of the locations, moving coffee to higher altitudes, which of course socio-ecologically is not so easy. But I think these are issues that need to be really placed openly on the table. And finally, to close, I mean, at COP here, we all recognize that we are facing headwinds when it comes to making progress against that bending we need to do and acceleration towards a safe climate future. It's very difficult to get collective consensus. So we need to find those unlocking leverage points where it becomes so obvious that if you get large enough minorities acting in a positive way to make the passive, inert majority, which are not always or very seldom denialist, it's just that they're finding it's more beneficial to sit in status quo. But if the coffee is threatened, then that might be a lever that could actually tip over the logic, even among passive, status quo bound inertia in the majority. And it may sound a little bit as a joke, but actually I think finding some of these keys for showing that, look here, a resilient decarbonized future is more attractive, it's safer, it's more profitable, it's more equitable, and it's simply a more modern, attractive future. I think we need to find those paths. We're actually succeeding in doing that in electrification of the transport sector. Why sit with a diesel internal combustion engine when you can go for a much more technologically advanced, much more attractive electric version? Well, what's the equivalent for coffee? And I think finding those keys is something that it would be interesting to explore as well in that research collaboration that we have. So with that, looking forward to the dialogue here, and it's great to be a science partner in this endeavor to connect the climate impact assessment that we are specialists on with the solution space to build more resilient coffee systems in the world, because boy, we need them. And I'm probably a 4-cup consumer myself, so we better get on with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johan. Yes, take your cup of coffee, of course. And we will travel now to actually where the coffee is produced. We will watch a short video coming from the coffee production. And I say, let's watch the movie.
I am called Tony Mugoya. I'm the CEO of Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance. Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance is partnering with the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research from Germany to help Excelsa farmers improve their production and quality. So we are partnering together with the Potsdam Institute to train Excelsa farmers on how they can increase their production and productivity, and also how they can improve quality to access specialty markets. These Excelsa farmers have reported being affected by climate change, and basically for them, climate change means extreme weather events. So we see very prolonged drought periods. We also see higher incidences of pests and diseases. So on a prolonged drought, we are promoting a coffee agroforestry farming system, which has helped to improve the resilience of farmers in seasons of drought. We are also helping the coffee farmers to use biological control of pests and diseases, which have become more prevalent due to climate change. So this partnership has improved the productivity of Excelsa farmers who previously were not targeted by previous training programs.
I'm called Kulawa Davis, chairperson of the Local Farmers Cooperative Society. Climate change has affected me in two ways. One, in long droughts, and in the other way, it's long heavy rainfalls. With the droughts, I've managed to plant some shady trees in my garden. My cooperative is a member of Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance. And I believe Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance is working hand in hand with the Potsdam to help us again overcome these problems. So we are requesting for more trainings from the government and even from that organization to support farmers with plant materials like this one that I'm having here.
Hola, mi nombre es Merlin Alexis Urrea, soy de Honduras. Desde hace 3 generaciones nos dedicamos a producir el café. Desde ese tiempo hemos venido teniendo problemas con lo que es el cambio climático. Hemos tenido problemas en bajas producciones. Hemos tenido pérdidas también de plantaciones. Esperamos de que en los gobiernos locales, tanto como internacionales, nos puedan apoyar para que así pues podamos lidiar con este problema que tanto nos agobia. Estamos empezando ya a reforestar nuestras fincas. Tenemos un plan de manejo donde cada año nosotros estamos sembrando nuevas plantas en nuestras parcelas y así pues lidiar con ese problema que nos está agobiando, que es el cambio climático, y así estamos cuidando las fuentes de agua y estamos también ayudando a que en el futuro nuestros hijos tengan un planeta mucho mejor.
Wonderful. And with these perspectives, we start now into our panel debate with the leading question: what are these critical challenges, and also what are the opportunities for climate change adaptation across the coffee value chain? And of course, how can international development support here in addressing these challenges? I do have Professor Johan Rockström already on stage, but I also kindly invite now João, Mattos, Vanusia, Nogueira, and joining us on Pensel and Pedro, Ronca to join me on stage. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. I quickly introduce you to our audience. So with us is João Mattos. He's the commercial director of the Latin American and Caribbean network of fair trade small producers and workers. And when it comes to numbers, he's supporting more than 1,000 fair trade certified organizations in Latin America. He, of course, with his organizations when it comes to coffee, cocoa, bananas, sugar, juices, fresh fruits, wine. So it has a lot of products. Thank you, João. Muito obrigada for being here. Also with us is Vanusia Nogueira. She's the executive director at the International Coffee Organization. And previously, she directed the Associação Brasileira de Coffees Especiais. I hope my Portuguese is already, it works, right? For 15 years. So you have a very high, a lot of experience when it comes to the market transparency, when it comes to sustainable production, and when it comes to fair incomes for coffee farmers worldwide. Obrigada for being here. Joining us online, and ladies and gentlemen in the stream, maybe in Germany, a good evening to all of you. You can see them already on the screen. We can see them here. Lovely to have you also on our panel, virtually joining us. We have Annette Pensel with us, the Executive Director of the Global Coffee Platform. And the Global Coffee Platform is building a specific and actionable framework for closing the living income gap by at least 25% for 1 million smallholder farmers. How does this work? We will see that and hear that in a minute. And we also have, last but not least, Pedro Ronca joining us. Pedro currently manages the Global Coffee Platform here in Brazil, and he's also coordinating the Cocoa Action Brazil initiative in partnership with the World Cocoa Foundation. First question, can you hear me? Can you hear us very well? Give us a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, that is the first test under these circumstances. It's a good sign, so thank you again. As I mentioned before, our leading question is how to tackle the challenges, but also how to lever the opportunities when it comes to climate adaptation within the coffee value chain. And maybe I'll start with you, João, because as a coffee producer, and we listened, of course, to the voices in the video, but again, how do you experience climate change in your everyday life, in your work day life? Take us with you.
Well, thank you for the invitation. Boa tarde, good afternoon, everyone. For us, it is maybe as complicated too much with the climate change, because it's not just the production itself. We can see the impact of the climate change, for example, in the market. We have a lot of volatility in the market right now, okay? Then we have problems in a lot of countries. We work as CLAC in 10 countries in Latin America. Then we can see in Brazil in the last year, for example, a very, very strong drought. Then you have maybe in the 2 or 3 years follow, we have problem with, or a big deception with the harvest, okay, the volume in coffee. This is impact too much in the market directly. For other side, you have problems with rain a lot, for example, in Colombia, or you have problems with hurricane in Central America. Okay, then it's very, very complicated. For other side, as impact, we can see the cooperatives, or a lot of cooperatives work a lot to mitigate the climate change or to adapt to climate change. Okay, then we can work, or you can see this, how I say, it's not a good impact, please, but how you can work with the climate change to guarantee a good income for the cooperatives.
We will hear, of course, more about it, just because Johan also mentioned that you are drinking already 4 cups of coffee. How many cups of coffee do you bring to the table per day?
Yes, depends. I'm a coffee producer. Then I have 2 bottles per day. Okay.
Wow.
It's very common for me. Today is just two cups, okay, because it's very hot. But I think included I need more caffeine.
You need more coffee. Okay. Vanusia, maybe you start with your amount of coffee that you're drinking every day to tell us a little bit, of course, about your work as well. Because the question is, when it comes to the International Coffee Organization, the so-called ICO, and its members, we are very curious, how do you address the challenges that we just listened to when it comes to the climate change consequences in the coffee value chain?
Okay, let's do it. I come from a coffee family, a coffee producing family. So I started to take coffee when I was a kid. This is very common in Brazil. It's coffee in Brazil. It's part of our school education. We started with coffee and milk, and then after some years, we introduced the coffee, the black coffee, to the teenagers and the people, mainly when we go to the university. So in our days, I can say to you that I can take a liter of coffee quite easy in a day. Some of them brewers and some of them espresso. And so I have coffee the entire day to have fun, to be socialized, to do everything. Well, talking about the ICO. The ICO is an international coffee organization that is an intergovernmental organization that puts together many different producing countries and also the consuming countries. We work all together since the 60s. We have right now 77 countries as members, and we exercise every day the multilateralism and the dialogue, looking for solutions and trying the main role of the organization is to tackle the major challenge that we have in the producing side and how the consuming side can help on that. And for having these, mainly for these next, I can say 15, 20 years, the organization and the governments, they realized that we cannot do this alone. We need to have the private sector together with us. We need to have the civil society together with us. For example, we have CLAC as a very good partner. We have GCP, the Global Coffee Platform, as a very strong partner. And we are addressing solutions for many issues that we have, many challenges that we have in the sector. I can give here one example that is the joint declaration that we signed between BMZ, GCP, and ICO in the January of last year, talking exactly about prosperity for producers, how to get more profitability for the producers. And now we are looking for these ideas and the implementation, how to implement solutions related to regenerative agriculture in the field. And I will not go into details on that because I'm sure that Annette is very well prepared to talk about these with us.
Beautiful, but I just wanted to go into that, what you just mentioned, and then I come back to you, Annette, because you mentioned, of course, we have the information, but now it comes really to the implementation within the, is that what you're saying, into the local?
Exactly.
Perfect.
We had many people, many partners that said to all of us, to me, to João, Annette, Pedro, all of us, let's stop a little bit with this discussion and let's go to action. We need to act. We need to go to the field and we need to implement because the solutions are urgent and we need to scale up.
Beautiful. Annette, I'm looking at you because, you know, when we are very curious to your perspective. What is your approach when it comes to addressing the challenges that we are listening to when it comes to the challenges in the coffee supply chain, particularly of the climate adaptation and ensuring the livelihoods and fair wages, of course, above all as well?
Thank you very much for having me and having us. Good evening from a dark and pretty coldish Germany. And I'm actually also one of the ones who has at least 4 cups of nice black coffee. Pleased to be here and pleased to see our members and partners there. Perhaps 2 words of who is the Global Coffee Platform. For those who don't know us, the GCP is a global multi-stakeholder membership association. We are the ones that are advancing coffee sustainability globally. And our members basically span all segments of the coffee value chain. So a lot of the private sector with us, from farmers down to roasters and retailers, but also civil society and associations and development partners. BMZ is a member, CLAC is a member, also banks and increasingly other supply chain actors that are interested in a thriving and sustainable coffee future are joining us because of exactly the reasons that were discussed by Professor Rockström and by the previous speakers. Vanusia, you said it. We have trouble in our sector, and we must work together in different ways, in faster ways, to find solution to those problems that actually we all share, and where there is not enough ability from one side alone, from one company alone, from one organization alone, from only the private sector, only the public sector, to actually crack through some of the solutions that can work for coffee farming families and the environment and the business alike. So our approach, you asked for our approach, is basically starting with bringing all relevant stakeholders together at the global level. And I have one of my colleagues here who is going to share more practical details about the work as an example from Brazil. So bringing stakeholders together at the global and the local levels to do basically three things: to align. There are many ideas, there are many preferences. It's sometimes, as Professor said, not so easy to actually find this alignment, this common language, this agreement on what to focus on. And then what we are doing with our members and partners, like the ICO, is to assess. So where are really the biggest risks, but also the opportunities? The opportunities that allow, for example, to close living income gaps in many coffee farming producing countries, but do that in different ways and forms. For example, through implementing regenerative agriculture practices. But how to do that at scale needs individual action and it needs collective action. And this is where the third area of our work comes in. We are bringing these different actors with different interests, also on the civil society side, together to basically accelerate smart collaboration. This is needed to overcome some of those barriers that we've been discussing. And the good news is there are solutions. So there are more solutions that we think. And while we need innovation, and we will talk more about examples and innovation that is needed, we can actually act at scale, but we need to create more urgency for this action to be much more accelerated.
Thank you. I'll take that, Annette, from your first round. Thank you very much. I'm looking to Pedro because, of course, when it comes to the keyword of regenerative agriculture, I would love to hear, and we would all love to hear more about your perspective about the opportunities coming out of regenerative agriculture in coffee cultivation. And of course, what is specifically needed for that with the focus on the Brazilian perspective and the local context. What can you share with us?
Okay, thank you. Thank you also for the opportunity. Unfortunately, I was not able to be there in person. I'm arriving at COP tomorrow. So, but happy also to see the colleagues and friends, Vanusia, João here together with us. And well, regarding I'm a coffee farmer also, and I'm an agronomist as background besides the director of GCP Brazil. And the regenerative agriculture, let's say, topic has been a priority for us since we realized that, as Professor Johan shared, climate is putting a huge challenge for coffee farmers, even in Brazil, where we have been having losses year after year. In the last, let's say, 5 years, every year we have problems with climate. So our main priority today is really to address the implementation of regenerative agricultural practices, looking a lot at the ones that are already showing good results in the field. And something very interesting to see in the field, sometimes you see one farmer neighbor to another farmer, and one is suffering high losses and the other one is not suffering much. In the same environment, let's say. So, and when you analyze the practices that they are implementing, you find that there are differences, especially related to the set of practices that regenerative agriculture are bringing, let's say, to the game. And I would at least fastly here just to start the conversation, but basically one of the ones that we consider most important is increasing the root system of coffee plants. Also by supporting a good nutrition in the soil. So we explore a larger share of the soil, that there is humidity down below. And we see a lot of room for increasing these practices, especially amongst smallholders, that even in Brazil are the majority. 70% of our home growers are below 20 hectares of land. So basically, to start the discussion, I would mention this important topic as root systems of coffee.
Beautiful, but when the the root systems of the coffee plant and of course this ecosystem, you know, when we come to collaboration, to working together, Pedro, which partners are important for you to make it successful, to really be successful on the local level? Who would you like to talk to, and what is then more needed in that collaboration and that in that strong partnership to build the bridges that we need?
No, in fact, we work, as Annette shared, in the collective action model, putting the sector together and aligning partnerships and prioritizing common topics. So we basically work with coffee cooperatives, associations, traders, and roasters. Besides public sector, also strong partnership with the public sector that is really embracing the agenda on sustainability and also on regenerative agriculture. Currently, we have established partnerships with both states of Minas Gerais and Espírito Santo. These two states represent 70% of Brazil's production. So we basically, and we do a lot of alignment also on the concept. We just concluded an alignment on the concept of regenerative agriculture for coffee, also for everybody to be speaking the same language and working to the same direction.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Before we start back into the next round of questions, I also warmly welcome now the Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, Reem Alabali. Radovan is with us. Thank you so much, Minister, for being here. We will talk to you in a second on stage. But we just mentioned the word of partnerships and collaboration, really bringing the force on a local level. And that's where I'd like to go a bit deeper with Vanusia as well. So what role does collaboration across companies, across countries play for you? Because of course it's important to have a collaboration, a partnership on the local level, but nevertheless we are meeting here in this very political international ecosystem. So what would be a big to-do and a big lever that you see?
Well, hello? Well, I can say to you that one point that I'm always saying to everybody is that there is no standard solution. We have more or less a standard challenge. It's covering all the planet, but we don't have standard solutions for that. The solutions will depend region by region, country, and depends on the culture and the system that they have, the political system that we have, the kind of infrastructure that we already have implemented in each country. So what we are doing is to have this kind of a dialogue and the discussions, putting all these people together and finding as Annette said, what is the highest risks, where are the highest risks that we have, and then we try to talk with the local governments as well to see if they are open to do these things in a different way, if they are willing to do these things in a different way, because in many moments we need the local public policies to change the things. For example, to regulate the carbon footprint environment, we need the regulations, local regulations, how to implement that, how to chart these, how to do all of these things. And we don't, unfortunately, we don't have this for coffee yet. So we need to discuss this in a global environment, but now and then doing a kind of Zoom to go locally and to see which kind of solutions we can have in each region. And as they already said, in each moment we can have different partners for doing that. And we need to have different ways to collaborate. One of the points that I would like to emphasize here very much is that BMZ is one of our key partners on this, and BMZ already realized that we cannot have standard solutions to apply everywhere. We are working together in different ways in different regions of the world to do that. I think this is key. We need to talk with everybody that we need to collaborate, but we need to find the ways to do that. Together with the private sector, as I already said, the governments from the north and also the governments from the south and also the civil society together.
Annette, I'm looking back to you before I come to you, João. So working together, collaboration, building partnerships, tell us a little bit more about your most important various actors that you are building collaborations and partnerships on.
A great question, and actually, I'm somehow emphasizing what was said before. So we need everybody in the coffee value chain, from the farmers, from the farmer organizations themselves, down to the roasters and the retailers. But we also need civil society. We need the public sector in coffee producing and in coffee consuming country that Vanusia is bringing together with the ICO. But we also need research, and sometimes we have been forgetting perhaps too much the important role of the finance sector. If we talk about transitioning to regenerative outcomes, regen coffee outcomes, which is one area of what the Global Coffee Platform has been working on at the Brazilian level, and Pedro will talk more about that, but we also provided some guidance at the global level on what does transitioning to regenerative agriculture actually look like, and is there enough alignment and understanding at the global level so that we don't talk about bananas and pineapples and mangoes at the same time, while wanting to make sure that coffee can continue to be grown in ways that it's actually providing even a living income and farmer prosperity, while also making it happen for the coffee industry with these price levels. And in the long term, like making sure that the soil, that the biodiversity, that the water resources can be used sustainably. So there is, like a variety of different partners needed, not least the financing sector and the assurance sector. And there is more work to be done to better articulate and share what works in perhaps at a small scale. What has been working in Uganda with the cooperation with the BMZ in Kenya, for example, with a public-private platform there, what is now being expanded to Uganda in the same collaboration with various GCP members and the BMZ and GIZ? How can we learn from the Brazilian experiences? Brazil is so much more advanced and using technology as well at a very different scale. How can we be smarter about exchanging and learning while keeping it flexible? Yeah, I like this emphasis very much, that we can't have standardized solutions, the silver bullets, and then think that this could be applicable in 50 very different coffee producing countries. But how can we better use what is already there? And there's a lot that can be shared, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Annette. Johan, of course, when it comes to the scientific perspective and when it comes to working together, we heard business, we heard industry, we heard policy, international development, local and global level, but also, of course, the science that needs to come in more and more to find solutions, to create solutions, and to upscale solutions. So where do you see the biggest lever from a science perspective to support climate adaptation within the global value chain in order also to knock out the barriers that we still have,
I think science plays and can play even more an important role across several of these strands. I think one really exciting first step is, of course, to continue working in collaboration with practitioners on the ground on developing more resilient coffee production systems. I think it's a very important strategy to use regenerative agricultural practices to develop more deep-rooted coffee planting systems, which are, probably the most promising way of building more moisture resilient, drought resilient, dry spell resilient cropping systems. And I must say that something that really admires me already in this conversation. We do a lot of research across all the commodities in the agricultural system, and when you talk about regenerative agriculture, it always falls in the camp of doing it for the sake of sustainability. But here we are discussing it from the perspective of resilience, of really building more robust coffee systems. And I think that's the way to communicate with policymakers and financial institutions and people outside of the core climate community. This is not really about, you have a win-win through a sustainable outcome, but you also actually build simply more stress tolerant, stronger, more productive It's all about, in the end, to make a living as a coffee farmer, as a person in the value chain of the coffee value chain. I think that science can be, or should be, also in the social sciences and in economic research, part of helping to bring forward that evidence that this is, again, it's a pathway towards a more resilient, prosperous, attractive outcome. It's not a question of kind of just backing off and trying to draw our little share to the climate footprint. It's much more than that. And I think that is important. And I think one additional thing that I think science can help with is actually that, I'll give you a story in another sector. We gathered scientifically for a few years ago the 13 leaders in the seafood industry in the world, because we identified them as keystone actors, and that climate change and overfishing and eutrophication is threatening the ocean system. So basically the seafood industry is facing a situation where the world in its entirety is undermining the very resource base that is the foundation for the whole industry. And they were actually not fully recognizing this as, you know, oh my God, if the ocean doesn't function anymore, then of course our industry disappears. And it could be that the coffee countries or sector is in a similar situation where you could have pre-competitive keystone actor gatherings. I mean, perhaps it's Brazil inviting for a number of key coffee regions in the world to argue why we need to avoid undermining the environmental conditions that makes coffee a thriving business. Because ultimately, unfortunately, I think there are limits to adaptation. That, you know, even though we do really good things on advancing resilient, adaptive coffee producing systems, regenerative agriculture systems, you know, at a certain point you cross a threshold and these systems will have to move somewhere else or be shut down. And that we all know we don't want to happen. But that has to do with something beyond just the coffee producing sector in itself. And again, I think science can be an honest broker in something like that.
Perfect. Thank you, Johan. João, coming to the end of our panel, you know, when we're listening to so many different voices, to many different stakeholders, to all, of course, your voices that you are representing here, what would be the next important step to have a good source of income, this is the rain now, sorry, I hope you can still hear me. What would be a next important to do from your perspective for the coffee farmers on the local level and the coffee producers?
Yeah. Well, first, I think included comment different vision or different presentations here. I think to start, we need for the small scale producers work with cooperatives or association. If you can, or if you're looking for scale this action, okay, as Vanusia mentioned, we need to organize the producers. The small producers is very complicated work alone, okay, then is one point. The second, I think we need respect the culture country by country, understand, okay, it's not just one legislation or one top down. We need identify country by country the different aspects. Okay, then in our case, for example, last week we launched a program. The name is A Cup. Sorry, it's in Spanish. In my yes, no, a sustainable coffee program. A Cup of Resilience. Okay, what's the idea? Is built the program is very flexible to adapt country by country because it's totally different. Okay, when you work in Brazil, in Central America, included inside the countries, we have different vision, different aspects. Then for us it's important how you can identify and build with the producers the solution. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sorry for the circumstances here. Of course, we are all, you know, battling the heat in a way. So thanks again to these brilliant panelists. Please give them a round of applause. Johan, Rockström, João, Mattos, Vanusia, Nogueira. Online joining us, Annette, Pensel, and Pedro, Ronca. Thank you. Let's move from the stage and you can get out of the hot spotlight. And now it's my big pleasure, of course, for the closing remarks, but also for more food for thought, to welcome here on stage Reem Alabali Radovan, the Minister, the German Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development. Minister, the stage is yours.
I don't know. Okay. You can hear me? Ladies and gentlemen, I can't even hear myself. I hope you can hear me. Okay, good. So, one of the first things many of us, especially in Germany, do is grab a coffee because it boosts our energy and keeps us running through the day, especially on days like this one. But it's not only consumers like us who run on coffee. We just heard it in this panel discussion. Coffee provides a livelihood for millions of smallholder farmers. Around 59 million people make their livelihood through coffee. That is almost the population of South Africa. But most do not earn what we would call a living income or a living wage. And there are many reasons for that. One is that there are still far too many human rights abuses happening in the coffee sector, such as child or forced labor. And let me be very clear, as Germany's development minister, I condemn all forms of human rights abuse. German Development Cooperation advocates for children's rights, for decent work, living income, and due diligence along global supply chains. And we will continue to. Another reason why so many coffee farmers and workers cannot provide for themselves and their families is climate change. Rising temperature, shifting seasons, and droughts all heavily impact coffee harvests. And COP30 can make a difference for coffee farmers and their community, because it will take international action to reduce the climate risk by being faced by people who depend on agriculture. At its core, international climate action means action to support global justice and poverty alleviation. The countries of the Global South have contributed least to the climate crisis, yet they face the greatest impact. And the same goes for people. Climate changes affect everyone, but not equally. Those who are already disadvantaged are more at risk. Women and girls, for example, indigenous people, and persons with disabilities. They have fewer resources and opportunities to protect themselves from extreme weather events or adapt to climate change. Germany is committed to acting in solidarity and making COP30 a real success. We have long supported partner countries in strengthening climate resilience, and we will remain a committed partner in the future. And let me highlight very quickly 2 ways in which German Development Cooperation is striving to strengthen the resilience of coffee farmers and their communities. First, we are investing in international partnerships and knowledge sharing. We work, for example, with the International Coffee Organization and the Global Coffee Platform. These organizations bring together producers, government, civil society, and industry to improve the situation of coffee farmers and make the coffee sector more sustainable. That includes measures to adapt to climate change as well to protect the rights of coffee farmers. And the German government contributes to the Team Europe initiative of deforestation-free value chains. It works with stakeholders along the coffee supply chain and in 7 partner countries. For example, to set up digital public infrastructure that allows smallholders to access the EU market. Farmers can meet the regulation required for exporting to Europe while also maintaining control over their own data. And this brings the first container of fully traceable, deforestation-free coffee was shipped from Honduras to Germany. And second, German Development Cooperation supports science and research Together with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, we support the AfriValue project. For example, it assesses climate risks across East African coffee value chain, and this helps develop targeted strategies to support farmers, traders, and retailers in adapting to climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, strengthening the resilience of the most vulnerable people and countries is not only a moral obligation, it is also an investment in shared prosperity. It benefits producers and consumers alike by supporting farmers in adapting to climate challenges with the protection of their livelihoods. But we also contribute to a steady supply of high quality coffee that helps stabilize prices. And that is clearly in the interests of consumers, be they from Europe, the Americans, or anywhere else in the world. We all run on coffee. It connects us across the countries. Let us join forces to ensure living wages, living income, and fair opportunities for smallholder farmers, farmers that grow the coffee that so many of us enjoy every morning and evening. Thank you so much for attending this session. Thank you to the panelists for your important perspective and impulse. Thank you, Kati, for the moderation. Thank you all, and have a great COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Minister, and thank you for attending and for joining our beautiful program. Come by. We have a fully packed program here at COP30, so it's 10 days. You're more than welcome, and now the coffee machine is back on for our much-needed coffee. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billey.